New for 96. With your hosts, Kevin McCauley and Chris Nguyen.
It wouldn't be stereo. His mic is mono.
Just go with it.
Yep. Urination in stereo. It would require two people, which is a thing.
All right.
So continue about Aston Martin.
I don't think this is a bad take, but I think the DB9 is one of the maybe top 5 prettiest cars ever made.
Yeah.
And I think the AMV8 is like the contemporary one of its time is like a truncated, compromised version of that ish. And there are a lot of people who find the smaller one to be like far superior and think I'm insane for thinking this.
No, you're right.
No.
I wouldn't argue with you. No,
Everyone else does.
I'd much rather have a DB9 V12,
Especially the early one.
Yeah, or like a 2007 DB9 Sport Pack with those twin 5-spoke wheels.
Yes.
Or a really early one in like one of those like really like Bang & Olufsen colors, like silver with like light wood in the interior.
Yeah.
It just looks so like blue tint, you know.
There used to always, when I lived in New York, there used to always be one street parked. I mean, Fifth Avenue street parked, but it was street parked like just north of Washington Square Park on Fifth Avenue. Like, and it was like a sage green. It was just awesome.
I love those DB9s. I actually, maybe this qualifies as a bad Aston Martin take, but I like the DB9 better than the DBS, the contemporary DBS of like that era. Because the DB9 was so under. I mean, I've driven neither of them.
Yeah.
But as an object, like the DB9 was so elegant, understated, and like the DBS was like trying a little too hard.
Yeah.
It had, all like
Well,
the carbon
totally
fiber and the Altezza lights.
It's
no offense,
proportions.
Altezza owner.
Yeah.
You know.
I
It is-
totally agree. And I think even the later DB9s with the more like LED strips and stuff got too aggressive and too like angry.
Yeah, I mean, I like them, but
I like them, but give me the early
the
pure
early one, like the 2000, like a 2004,
With
like
the
in
wheels,
some sort of
the whole thing.
in some sort of silver with a light interior, like that was like, oh my god, Aston Martin is cool again.
Like, I think I don't hate the AMV8, but I think it's like a weird, like short version where it's like, well, we got this really short wheelbase, which is cool, but we got to make these headlights extra short. It's almost like the X type to the bigger XJ.
In period.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but like I get what you're
would.
saying.
I think
just
I
did.
think it's a good looking car, but I think it worked better in period than it does now. And there's probably a reason why they're now $30,000 on a good day to buy.
To be fair though, DB9s are not that much more.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, that's true.
You know, like you can find
But
ratty DB9s
you-
for mid 40s.
you can find assurance in your decision by way of it costing a lot more to maintain, I'm sure. So.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah, whereas the V8 was just a Jaguar V8 with some different stuff.
I
you
would
know?
rather have a DB9 than the Ian Callum Vanquish. That's 700,000 pounds.
I think I like that Vanquish, but I think it's kind of overrated.
Oh, no.
Maybe-
I mean his Resto Mod Vanquish.
Oh well, that too. I kind of like that, but like I just think that whole generation of Vanquish, it's like it's cool in that sort of like brutish way, but like I think the DB9 was perfect.
The DB9 was perfect. I didn't like that Vanquish at all when it was new. I was like a total DB7 stan. But in the Vanquish, I was like, this is too brutal and too vulgar. And then obviously the world has changed to get worse.
Yeah.
And so I've come around on those. And also,
Well, those are
every time
conservative, now.
every time I've seen a Vanquish of that like early 2000s, like the owner is like absolutely caning it. Like just it's
that's cool.
awesome, like in a cool way. And like it just like it's somehow I always see them in like the appropriate moment and it's like just right and it's cool. So they're cool, but yeah, the DB9 is
my hot take
like,
is that
so
I
better.
can't believe they no longer make the Signet, which, I mean, let's be honest, is the
I
best
saw
Aston
one
Martin because it is. Did you really?
You did?
Yeah, in Europe. But
Of course,
yeah.
yeah.
I was like, holy shit.
Okay,
Like,
I am
couldn't believe it.
astonished
cool.
that looking at British used car listings, that these things are like still like $30,000-$40,000.
Yeah, I looked.
So
and
you
they're
could
like
have
40,000.
you could have a Vantage or a Signet. Which would you choose?
Oh my god.
The Signet. I mean, it would be a lot cheaper to own the Signet.
That
It
is
would.
true.
Be a
It
little
is
more
the most
reliable.
reliable Aston Martin ever made. That is
Yeah, probably.
for sure. And there are people who go to great expense to convert their IQs. Scion Did they ever make?
Yeah, there's one in Austin that's
Yeah.
converted.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
They'll
I guess
import
if-
the bodywork.
I don't
I
think
mean,
it's very common as Chris makes it sound like, but I think it has
don't know.
happened.
I mean, it's
Um,
funny. If the owner does it and like recognizes that it's funny, it's cool. But if they think it's cool in an unironic
Yeah,
way,
if they're
then
trying to
it's
make
not
like a
cool.
fake hand. Well, the whole car is a fake handbag to begin with, but
Right.
yeah,
a fake handbag,
yeah, basically.
double fake handbag.
So I always thought the DB7 was like one of the best looking cars ever, and I think because the DB9 has like the proper shoulders and proportions and stuff, like it does eclipse it. But I wasn't sure, initially. I wasn't sure. I always like the DB7, and I just found out something very interesting about the DB7. We're beyond hot takes. We're into just boring trivia. So sorry, everyone.
That's why I signed up to be on this
Okay.
podcast.
So I just found this out about the DB7, and this might blow your mind. I am all about what I call door sprouting mirrors. So if the mirror is attached to the door versus attached to like that corner of the window, like the door mounted mirror is much more prestigious to me because it's like more expensive to produce and everything. The DB7 had both during its lifetime, and I don't know of another car that ever had both.
It had both?
It had both.
Really?
Now, here's what happened. So when it launched, this is another thing about the door sprouting mirror is if you think about it, a door mounted mirror is cheaper for like low volume, but it's cheaper for low volume, but a window mounted mirror is cheaper for production. If that makes sense. Like they both have like a different cost. Like a window mounted mirror is more expensive to develop but cheaper to produce, and a door mounted mirror is more expensive to produce but cheaper cheaper to develop.
I'm trying to find a photo of this door mounted.
So the early DB7 had the Citroen CX mirrors mounted on the doors, which are
many
on
other every other supercar.
Yeah.
had
every
those
other
mirrors.
supercar. Lotus Esprit, lots of Lotus, everything.
Yeah.
The facelifted V12 Vantage DB7, I think they were XK8 mirrors that were mounted on the windows.
Okay.
That makes sense.
What do you think was the last car before that had body mounted mirrors?
The current 911. There's lots of cars that have
No,
body mounted
Aston
mirrors.
Martin.
I don't know.
The Virage was the last one, according to this Wikipedia entry. Because I'm trying to look up a photo of this door-mounted mirror.
The 90s Virage or the one they made in like 2012?
No,
for, like, 3
no.
minutes?
The 90s, 89 to 2000. Oh my God!
Okay.
It lasted from 89 to 2000.
Yeah, I mean they built like 3 of them. In that
Yeah,
time
yeah.
period, you know, but
That just blew me away when I read that. I thought I had misread that.
it's funny that the door mirror DB7. I mean, well, admittedly very nerdy. I would have never noticed that. It's funny because it mirrors like Aston Martin's fortunes because when they developed the DB7, they had no money.
Yeah.
And like it had like Mazda 323 taillights. Like the interior door handles are from a Miata. It was so Ford's partsman. But by the time they got to like the DB7 Vantage, the thing had a V12 and everything. It was like it had like its own like switchgear or like some of its own switchgear.
Right. Yeah,
Like,
they
but it's because
transitioned.
like they had some money. Like the DB7 was actually a decent enough success.
Totally. And it was PAG. PAG was rolling in cash then.
Yeah.
They had that PAG money, and that's where the XK8 mirrors from. But what made it so weird is that like I always associate like the door mounted mirrors with being more expensive because it is more expensive to produce. You have to have precision drilling and it's more labor. But it is a lot more development to come up with a mirror that like installs in the window because it's got to be a bespoke angle for that mirror.
Right, because
for
the
that
DB7
installation.
was like a barely developed. Like it was a great car, but it was barely. It was an XJS.
Yes.
It was a 1970s Jaguar with some nice steel bodywork.
And I think it was. I believe that it was like pitched to TVR and they rejected it.
No, it's TWRs. Tom Walkinshaw Racing built it. It was supposed to be.
Did they build it?
It was supposed to be. I actually did a story on this. It was supposed to be the F-Type, and Jaguar decided not to do it. They decided to do the XK8 instead, and they decided like we're just gonna make it an Aston Martin. They gave it an Aston Martin grille and a couple other things, but like it was supposed to be a Jaguar, which is why it's like got a Jaguar platform, a Jaguar engine, tuned Jaguar engine, everything else. But yeah, it was supposed to be an F. It was supposed to be like they were gonna bring the F Type back in the 90s, and so there are like styling mules of like DB7s that have like XJ220 type grills out.
Oh wow, that would have been interesting.
Not super well known, but yeah, I did a story on this like a while ago. But yeah, so it was supposed to be an
link
F-Type.
to that. That actually sounds cool. We will actually link to that because that sounds really cool.
Yeah, but then like obviously the DB7 became more of like an Aston Martin, and then like by the time they came with the Vanquish, like they were actually it was like a fully bespoke Aston.
Well, and by
Martin.
that time, Jaguar had the XK8.
Yeah,
their
which,
own.
Right.
Why
Which
wasn't that called an F Type?
I think because it was I don't know because I think they realized it wasn't like sporty enough, or they just thought it was like I don't know, it wasn't worthy.
I just sat in one recently.
Really?
Yeah, a friend of mine had bought one for $2,000, so you know that's going to end well. It's a convertible
I just
too.
did like a tiny spit take.
And he handed me the keys to get in it, and I forgot. I was like, "Oh, so you got the skinny key?" And he handed it to me, and I forgot that this was at the time extremely a Ford product, and so it had like the Ford key fob remote lock thing. The one that they used until like 2005 or whatever. But yeah, go ahead.
My friend had the Maisto of the XK8, green on green convertible, and that was like the first Maisto that
I have that
around.
one.
Nice.
I actually have that. Yeah, I still have that.
Nice.
It's a coupe. It's a coupe actually, but it's green on green.
Oh yeah.
I actually think the XK8's aging really well. I don't know if it's a good car to own.
No.
But I think they look every time I see one, which is not often.
Yeah. They look
They
good.
look really cool.
They're
Yeah.
so
They look
different.
good.
And the coupe especially. It does look
Yeah.
good as a
Oh,
convertible, but the coupe is
The
so
coupe is
elegant.
really pretty.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually hot Aston Martin take. I think the XK8 might be better than the early DB7. I think the DB7 aged into something really beautiful, but the early ones are kind of awkward. And but like I think the DB7 Vantage or the GT was the best, but like the XK8 was like a more cohesive design from the start.
Yeah.
I'm gonna interject. I was looking at these pictures because I was doing my mirror analysis not 24 hours ago, and I think I like the early DB7 even more.
The early DB7 had the better wheels, though.
I think I like the early DB7 even more than the later one, but in just like a weird like C4 Corvette kind of way, where the early ones like the original Vision, but the XK8 piece of trivia. I don't know. This is not the same trivia. This is not like something where it's like concrete, but it's one of the last cars I can think of that doesn't have like noticeable like flares around the wheels. I'm serious. Every single car since the XK8 has like some kind of flareage. It doesn't matter if it's a Caliber or an S-Class or a Mazda 3 or anything. Every single car has like some kind of visual like flare around the wheel arches. And the XK8 is just kind of like smooth, like, bar of
It kind of
soap.
has that. Yeah, it kind of has that sort of thing where like the wheels are the fenders are almost like tucked under the wheel.
Yeah,
arch.
like a 356 or something.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's why it looks so pretty now because it looks so different. It looks so.
does.
Yeah, the coupes are really good.
The coupes. It looks so dainty.
It's dainty and it's not designed to look like it's glued to the ground. It like it looks floaty. It looks like a boat kind of. Literally.
Yeah, like it has an angry face, but like other than that, it's so like cute.
Yeah.
Oh
man, and if it wasn't ruinous, although we've been tweeting about or texting about ruinous cars like the V10 Touareg and had W8. They had W12 Phaeton too, I guess. Did they have a 12 and an 8 or just the 8?
Yeah, they had a W12.
They had a W12. Yeah, of course they did.
What was the lowest Phaeton you could get? Was it the
W8? The V8.
Okay.
The V8.
Or
it was just a V8.
It was a V.
Oh, okay.
Oh, huh.
Or was it a W8?
I don't know.
I think it was a V8 because it was
It was
a big
probably a
car.
V8. It was
Unfortunately,
probably
the only
V8, like, probably
people
just
who've owned these who know about that and can confirm are dead now from ownership. So,
right.
But the XKR would be so cool to own.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not the fastest thing in the world, but it's such a one of the last remnants of old school British
But
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you want a last remnant of old school British, like I would want the contemporary XJR with those 5 spokes, like the sedan.
Yeah.
Those
I
were
actually,
cool.
I know of one that I can have for free, but it's been sitting for a few years.
In Detroit through several
in
winters.
Michigan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
But I actually considered it, and I was like, I don't know how much this will cost, but I'm
Yeah.
kind of like, but it's a really good looking car.
They're
It is good
beautiful.
looking.
It's a beautiful car. I saw one the other day, and I was like,
I think they're
these are
like
gorgeous.
for like running
They look
examples.
tiny.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because they're so slim. Like
Yeah,
They're very
yeah.
slim.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the right word.
But I mean, they're still. I mean, like they're like $5,000. XJRs might be like 10 grand, if even that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, as with anything that you should love, it is just the entry cost. So
You get
Yeah,
that
right.
walnut.
yeah.
Get lots of
You
walnut.
get the walnut. You get the leaper badge on the
Yeah.
hood. Like,
By the
yeah,
way,
it's-
as we've been talking about certain topics throughout this podcast, not friend of the pod, because I don't think he actually listens. Daniel Golson is now tweeting about command in all caps. By the way,
You didn't shout it. You have to shout it.
command.
I don't know
good.
why you haven't had him on the pod yet.
We
Well,
have
so
a list.
We wanted to. You are the first like remote guest we've had, and like since the pandemic, like we just
Yeah,
haven't
this
been
is
doing
true.
this. Like
Yeah.
we just didn't really have our shit together with recording and having as far as like the technical aspects and the motivation aspects and stuff. But
We've got a list.
But yeah.
We got a list going.
yeah, we have a list.
You there, listener? I'm pointing to you.
Yeah.
You're coming on next. Yeah. So
So
go on.
what do you have? What do you have coming up? Anything
Me?
exciting that you can talk about?
When does this come out?
Probably this coming week because we're supposed to release like Tuesdays.
Okay. Well, actually, I want to say real quick, while we're on the subject of Jaguars, I think I told Kevin, but not you, Chris. I drove an E-Type recently for the first time.
Oh.
Ooh,
Wow.
And it was very neat. It was on like a 93-degree day, so
Yeah.
I melted because the engine transmission gave off so much heat.
Convertible.
Whoa.
Like, no, coupe. It
Ooh.
was
Which
a
which series?
Series 1.5. So it was the
Ooh.
Series 1, but with the non-covered headlights,
The one where
twin carbs instead of
the smaller
triple
testicle part, where because they all look like penises.
I'm cutting this out, please.
What?
What are you doing?
I don't like
Continue.
The headlights are at the front.
The headlights are not the testicles.
the body is the testicle because they have
All
the
right.
long hood and then
Okay.
the body like they cabin.
Yeah, we know the phallic references,
Yeah.
but like you're just.
Look, we're several whiskeys in at this point. Anyways, the
I'm
point.
only 2.
I have finished this
I'm pretty
handle.
lucid to know that this makes no sense.
I finished this handle here. No, so anyways, because the newer ones, like for whatever reason, they looked a little bit more bulbous.
Oh yeah, they definitely got worse. This
Yeah.
was the last like pretty one.
Yeah.
So 68 is when they changed the tail lights, but this one has they got rid of the glass covers on the headlights
Yeah.
for safety, like US safety, and it didn't have the toggle switches inside, like the airplane style, like
yeah.
the actual like switches. It had like more conventional type.
Side note: what is the safety issue with the glass covers?
I just think they just thought the glass would break if you hit something.
Huh.
Hit
Did
someone.
they have in Europe? Did they still have glass?
I think they got rid of. I think Jaguar they only made one version of it because I think they sold most of them in the U.S. anyways. So like they just
okay.
sold. I'm pretty sure they just sold like whatever the U.S. spec car was in Europe. So
Gotcha.
in Europe it also got worse because of U.S. I don't know. I don't know what the glass thing. I don't. Maybe it was like maybe it had something to do with like headlight distance or
Yeah.
something, or I don't know.
Because it coincides with, I guess, other cars that had glass covers.
Yeah, a lot of cars.
Yeah.
A lot of cars got rid of them at that.
There's
around that
listeners
time.
screaming like, "Tell us more about the E-Type," and Chris keeps interrupting.
Okay. Do continue, please.
It was cool. It's fast.
Really?
It's I mean it's got 250 horsepower. Like
Wow.
it's really torquey too. So like I felt like the coolest person in the world because like I was on the highway passing people
Oh.
like with my arm leading
Yeah.
out like fourth gear, like 4,000 RPM, and like every time I passed someone they'd give me a thumbs up.
I mean,
Oh,
genuinely,
like they're
that's
like
cool.
right this way, you know?
I
Like
hesitate
That's
to use such a
awesome.
boomery word, but that is it's a sexy car. Like it's just so like
I've never been in a
Ugh.
car that gets so much attention and like just but like
All positive.
100% positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not because you drive like anything else. Like it's like some people like it, some people hate it, but everyone's looking at you. This time, every single person like was just like, "Oh my god, that's the prettiest thing I've ever
Yeah.
seen."
That's
It's so
awesome.
weird because it's like, it's such like a traditionally pretty car, and like lately I've been so into like weird things, so
Yeah.
it's sort of weird to indulge in something
Sure.
so traditionally pretty, but
Yeah.
it was also really neat, and it drives actually really well. It handles well, it rides well. The
Big steering wheel.
big steering wheel,
Wooden.
but the steering's really light.
Ah,
How's
Um,
the gear shift?
Pretty good. The one of the later ones, they got rid of that Moss gearbox, so actually it's fully synchronized. So
Okay.
it's slow. It's a slow change, and the clutch is heavy, and the pedals are a little weirdly spaced. So I found it difficult to heel toe. Not that like you're going to be heel toeing a bunch in an E-Type, but it's easy enough to do. It's not like you're crunching gears all the time. Like it's
Yeah.
you can shift into first when you're rolling into stop.
Yeah.
Rolling to a
Oh
stop,
wow,
which is
fancy.
a real
that is
plus.
very.
But
was this a
yeah,
privately owned car?
yeah, it's Jamie Kitman, who's
Oh.
a fellow journalist in
yeah.
New York and a car collector and a extremely good dude.
I hope he
That's
parts
great.
that
So
too.
did he seek out the series 1.5? Is it like
He said he
you
bought
get,
it.
oh,
He said it would just like he was sort of looking for one. He said he bought it on September 13th, 2001.
Oh,
And he said like he was kind of looking for one, and the guy like after 9/11, the guy just like dropped the price by half.
oh my God! Wow.
Wow.
And so he bought it, and then like over 10 or 15 years, kind of like got it to work, and now it's
wow,
like actually nicely sorted.
Yeah.
It drove really well. Like
that's great.
I mean, I got really hot, and like I would probably dynamite the shit out of like the transmission tunnel
Yeah.
if it were my car, because but also it was a 93-degree day, and the car doesn't have any ventilation
Yeah.
whatsoever. But it like I drove for hours, and the thing never overheated. It was like totally just good.
That is cool.
that's
Um,
great.
This is the
That's
one-
awesome. You get to tool around for hours.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, no, it was cool. I drove all over I put like 300 miles on it. And,
Wow.
and it was just like, and it would just kind of was like, it was very hot and noisy, but like
Yeah.
other than that, it was actually really good.
And
I
300
kind of-
miles in that is like 900 miles in like a car.
I was so tired afterwards.
Yeah.
Like the next day I basically like slept all, like I slept in, and then I slept all afternoon. I mean, because
That's
also it was 93 degrees out. Like it was so hot.
That's awesome.
But it was cool.
I saw you did like kind of like a group drive maybe 2 months ago or something with a bunch of people.
Yeah, so this was kind of the same thing. Jamie and some friends put this together, and so it's sort of like a socially distant, like try to be responsible,
Yeah.
but like take some old cars out and
That's cool.
go to all the cool roads in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, etc. So yeah, it was neat.
Does it?
Fantastic.
So
I did
this had the wood decking in the back as well.
I think it was just like a vinyl or something.
Oh.
I don't think it was wood.
Okay, I always thought that because it's just a 2-seater, right? Or is it a 2x2?
Just a
Okay.
two-seater. They did a 2+2, but it was uglier.
Yeah. Oh, that's the one with the. That's when it got bulbous.
It got kind of bulbous.
Yeah, that's the bulbous
yeah.
one I'm thinking of. The giant ball. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Now I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I still don't, but
The
you know, it's
testicle.
fine.
The engorged testicle.
All right.
All right.
All right.
Now we got to put a label on this one.
God.
Anyways, yeah, no, that's very cool though. There's one that kind of shows up to a local cars and coffee thing all the time. The green one or the blue one. It's blue.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah. But never driven one. Don't know anyone who has one. I don't think.
It's a neat car. I
Yeah.
hope to drive it again at some point. It's really
I
neat.
I know someone who I don't keep in contact with him anymore, but like his dad was dumb and bought a Series 3.
Okay.
And they had like a Series 3, and that's like a V12, but like
the worst
really,
one,
yeah.
it's the worst one. It's like the Mustang. It's not the Mustang 2. It's like the 71 Mustang of
It was big.
XK.
Well, it was American.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
a lot of them were
yeah.
automatics
Yeah.
and just kind of
Yeah.
like, yeah.
yeah.
You lose all the delicacy of the original. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's interesting. I wonder what like the best year to have is.
I think there's a good argument for the 67, the Series 1.5, just because it's like it's not quite as pretty because you don't have like the wood trim in the dash and the switches and the headlight covers, but like it was like more sorted, it had better brakes, better transmission, but it was before it got ugly, like really ugly, you know?
You wouldn't
So
you wouldn't fit the headlight covers just because it's not period correct.
I don't know. I don't know if you can. It might be a different.
'Cause-
it might be a different size of headlight. Maybe that's what it
Oh.
was.
This
That the
has-
headlights were like bigger than the covers
Yeah,
or
'cause-
some
Yeah.
shit. You know.
That also has like
This is like the sugar scoops.
yeah, but it has
Yeah.
it also has like chrome trim, right? That runs the
Yeah.
length of the car or something like that, or the hood.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I guess to compensate something like that. But
Well, we should.
Kevin, you have one last topic on it. Do you want to talk about it,
uh,
or do you want to?
I don't even know what it is.
It is 240SX.
Oh yeah. Well, this was originally Land Cruiser related, and I deleted that because I did not want to talk about Land Cruisers again. But this was there was that
Land Cruisers
37
are in.
We still can.
They're very
There
in.
was there was a $37,000.
Funny, you should get one.
It was
there-
32,000. I looked this one up because I had to see what you're talking about.
No, it was 37, I think.
Was there? No, there was. Well, unless there's another one. There was a $32,750 1990 240SX that sold this week. No.
All right, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. It was 32,750.
Still a large sum of money
Okay.
for
Yeah.
a car. I mean, like this exceeds the purchase price of the car, inflation included.
Yeah, is this the first 240SX to appreciate?
I think so. And like the sell, so I had to look into it. I always dig down into the bidding war that goes on, and the seller alluded to a mysterious buyer who has a high appreciation for these. So I assume it's going into a collection of Nissans of some kind, which is why it was bid up to $32,000.
Yeah, I thought this would be an interesting topic because of two reasons.
Yes.
Like, if you're buying, okay, so I first of all I understand why this went for this kind of, but it's also like kind of frustrating because like if you're buying like if you want like a nice like clean unmolested like 91 Prelude or like a 99 Civic Si and you pay this giant premium for it, it's like you're getting that car, you're getting as close as you could get to buying it new.
Yeah.
But the 240SX, like it had like a truck engine.
Yeah.
Like it's infamous for being like a not
Very
great package out of the
underpowered.
box.
It was
great
great
for it was
handling.
famous. This is a car that was famous for being modified and
Yeah.
engine swapped because what we got was such a
Yeah,
compromise.
because people would
So
drop
to
in
pay this premium,
the turbo or something like that. Because we only got the NA.
people,
here
yeah,
only.
people, we got, but not just. It wasn't just an NA. Like the in Japan they had an SR20. In here we got. Well, they did. They're like, well, we'll just give you this KA24 like truck motor.
Yeah.
And it was not just a naturally aspirated motor. It was like a worse engine. So this was not like a fine package altogether.
Well,
I'm sure
it was
I'm
lauded.
sure it's okay.
This was kind of like this was kind of I think in its day very Miata lauded in that this is a great handling package, and it was probably I would suspect because I don't have a high knowledge of these cars, but like other rest of world spec, this car was designed for that, and so it's great, and especially with the turbo, etc. It handled well. It was rear-wheel drive. You get it with an LSD. Like,
right, but that's what's weird
lightweight.
that this flawed version went for the premium.
Yeah, like
Was it a bidding war, or is it just because like these don't exist, and like if you want to
The-
clean
it's 'cause
one,
think
these-
they don't
I think it's
exist.
because these don't exist.
if you want to clean one, this is the one.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly, exactly,
Unmodified.
and that's why I get it. Like our friend Tony was like, I've never seen like people that are younger than us, like people like you, Chris Perkins, like people that are younger than us. It's like I've never seen one on stock wheels, and I'm like, oh, well, that kind of puts things in perspective for me. 'Cause it's like like they just don't exist. Like they were all
Okay.
modified, they were all tuned.
So I read somewhere that they had to do something because the wheels were or they're not aerodynamic for some reason, or to some extent. So they had to modify something on the car. And I've just entered into this topic without a completed knowledge of what I'm talking about. But the U.S. market version is weird. Like it's a weird packaging exercise, but I get it though. It's like from a base standpoint, and why they were all modified was because this was just kind of like, I guess, a modifier spec car. Like
and
ready.
it definitely grew into that, especially as like everything else in the
And then they
market
were
went to
destroyed,
front wheel
yeah.
drive.
Even in the back comments, so like people are saying like, I would buy this except that it's too nice because what I want to do to it is basically change everything. So
Yeah.
It is weird. It's not the car for me, at least for this price. So I think that's kind of interesting that there is a specific love for this car, because there are also other Nissans in this price. There are other marks that were of this era where I think $30,000 could be a better value
944
proposition.
turbo.
What's that?
You get 944 turbo.
Yeah.
A nice 944. I mean, maintenance would be triple the Nissan
yeah.
at the very least, but like,
Oh yeah.
And
you know.
I'll be the contrarian to this, and I know it's not the same car by any means because it weighs twice as much. But like, I'd probably have a 300ZX if we were going into this territory.
Yeah, among Nissans, yeah. I mean, a really good Miata, honestly.
Or a really good Miata,
like a really, really sorted
mean,
Miata would be great.
You buy
know.
two like pristine ones for
Yeah, 15 grand will get you an incredible
yeah,
Miata.
yeah.
Like I would, if I was gonna stick with Nissan, I would love a 300ZX twin turbo, but also and you could get a really good one for this money.
Yeah.
But also like a later, like a 96 240SX, like
Yeah.
they don't come up very much, and a stock one would also fetch this amount of money, but those are pretty cool. Same engine issues that I described,
Yeah.
but they look cool, and that'd be like a neat car.
Yeah.
You get a GTR for that sort of money? Probably not, right?
No.
An R32.
See, and
Oh, you could get an R32.
I lean
Or maybe a ratty one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago, you could get a decent R32 for like 25 grand, I thought. But
I think those will come back down just as more people
Do
import
you
more
think
Skylines.
that U.S.
But
spec
anyway.
cars are like, you know how we revere rest of world cars? Do you think U.S. spec cars are appealing to the rest of the world in any way?
well, only like our friend Tom said, like Typhoons and like Yukon GTs and stuff.
The unobtainium for other markets.
Yeah.
Like I was telling you, in Japan, I saw like the early 2000s Trailblazer in much more frightening frequency than I thought would be the case.
Weird.
So I don't know if they actually imported that as an option, because everything offered there domestically was far superior, or if
Yeah.
someone imported those, but neither here nor there. And I know that I'm talking about more grand tours, I guess, like the 300ZX, and I think in the same era too, I'd probably rather have like I don't know. Oh, well, we're talking about like U.S. market cars. I was gonna say like a Soarer of some kind.
Actually, I have the solution.
Yeah.
I don't know why it took me this long to think of it. FDRX7.
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
RX-7. Yeah,
You're right.
that would be
I
my
don't-
pick.
I think
That-
32 would get you a pretty nice one,
yeah,
right? Like
it
a
would.
pretty
Nice
nice
one,
stock.
yeah.
And like from what I understand, again, maintenance is not easy on those cars, and like there is rotary weirdness. But
Yeah.
from what I've heard, they're sublime to drive. It's just like a Miata with more power.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've driven
Um,
one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're good. It was always my dream car. It was always like, oh, when I'm 30, I will have one. And of course,
Yeah.
I didn't buy one when because like
is it-
reasons.
You could sell your
I could.
911.
Yeah.
I could, but I
If you
didn't.
want a less reliable car.
Yeah.
Less known knowledge about Kevin is that he nearly ended up with a Z car before the 911. You were looking at.
I had a Z. I owned a Z.
You owned a Z, but you wanted a classic 240.
my first foray into like classic cars could have been like a 240Z.
Yeah.
Like it seemed to have all the appeal of like a classic car that still has like some actual performance and like durability. I still think it's probably an awesome intersection of those factors
Yeah.
of like,
Why
I
it's a
mean,
beautiful
compared
car.
to
it's
com-
a
compared
reliable
to
E-Type.
Yeah, it looks like an E-Type goes better.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, well, I mean-
lasts longer.
a friend that we've had on the show before has like a Datsun Fairlady 1600. Cool car,
Very cool.
but it's so slow and like dainty that it's hard to operate
Yeah.
in the real world that exists.
Yeah.
And like a Datsun, I think like a 240 would be like kind of maybe use it as a car, but it also
Oh,
is
yeah.
like they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, my question originally about the Land Cruiser for the 240SX was here's the question.
Yes.
So 15 years ago, when everyone was like modifying their cars, like their Civics, their 240s, especially. Like everyone's tuning it. It's like, oh, well, this one is upgraded. It's better. Like there was not really derision to modifying something in the same way that there is now, where it's like, oh yeah, well, they're all like that. And I wonder if non-overlanded Land Cruisers are going to be seen in 10 years where it's like, oh, well, they didn't fuck it up. That's kind of cool. Like, you know what I mean? Where it's like right now, because like, overlanding is cool and doing these mods is cool, and it does not have the derision of, oh, but I want a clean one. I know there's obviously a premium for a clean one. I know that exists. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, and we don't need to talk about this, but I'm just saying, like, do you think it'll be a point where it's like in 10 years where it's like rare, like where you, because I still see a 1,000 stock Land Cruisers in a week, but do you think we'll get to a point where it's like, oh, that's extremely uncommon?
I don't know, because I don't think it falls in the same category as like if you saw like a pristine Range Rover Classic with like 1,000 miles on it. I think someone would pay a premium for that versus an 80 series. I mean, people are. It's that one 80 series in Houston went for $77,000.
I said not to bring it up, but yeah.
Sorry, too late. Which is insane. But I think the community, where the meat of the community is in high quality modified ones. So like a lot of the 100 series that are going on bat for a lot of money are basically someone has put all the work into overlanding it. And low mileage does, like, you hate this, but I send you listings all the time. Like, hey, look at this, like, 100,000 mile 100 series that's going for $20,000. So yes and yes, I guess, is the answer to that, is that yes, low mileage examples will have their collectors, but also everyone also realizes that these things will go 1,000,000 miles, no problem. And so it's the next step, I guess, after Concours level example is what you do with it afterwards, or can do with it afterwards, which is add like about $60,000 worth of like kit to it. I am in neither of these camps. Like, I don't care for it to have low miles. In fact, I looked for a high mileage example on purpose. And I don't plan on actually overlanding it. I might put big tires on mine, but that is about as far as I think I will go on it. So, I don't know. I think it's just the Land Cruiser is such a weird. It could almost be its own brand, and not necessarily a Toyota. I mean, it goes in line with the reliability thing, but it is its own thing. Like, it lives and breathes on its own somewhere on an island outside
Chris
of...
Perkins, do you have anything to add?
I think the difference between like the modified Land Cruiser and like the modified 240 is like, I would have to look up real data for this, but I think there are more Land Cruisers than there are 240s.
Yeah,
so like
absolutely.
so like an unmodified 240, it's like it's a much, like, we derive these sort of modified things because like there aren't that many unmodified ones left. Whereas like I feel like there's always going to be like at least like somewhat of a supply of unmodified Land Cruisers, just because like there are plenty of people who just drive them like they're normal cars.
I will say
Yeah,
that
I think
or like
both
you're
of these
right.
cars, though,
overland.
because the 240, while it wasn't necessarily an economy car, it was a mass-produced, accessible car. I think both the Land Cruiser and the 240 are cars that were always used as intended, which is why they're so like clean, either low mileage or just good examples out there, which then contributes to like this being $32,000.
Well, it's like the difference between like that and a Ferrari, where like it's rare to see a Ferrari with more than 50,000 miles, because like who would ever use their Ferrari?
Yeah.
You know, like why would you drive it? You know, whereas like a Land Cruiser, it's like, why wouldn't you drive it? Or a 240, or, you know, I mean, hey, I had that trouble when looking for a Miata. Like my Miata was under 100,000 miles, and like that was a really hard to. And I wasn't like looking for a low mile car, but like there were not many NA Miatas with 100,000 miles for
Yeah,
sale.
they
Like
were used as
either you get
intended.
the stuff that's on Bring a Trailer, like the $15,000 like special edition, really great color, super clean, super low miles, or like stuff that's got 150 to 200,000.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
so
there is that.
How does Miata life compare to Boxster ownership?
Boxer ownership thus far, it's like easier to drive day to day. Like it's a much better daily driver. I one of the reasons I sold the Miata is because like just driving it in New York City, you felt like it started to feel like a really old car. You know, it's like you suddenly it's like, oh, this is really small. Everyone's driving trucks and SUVs. People can't see me, and like there's like this much steel, you know, between me and the door, you
And
know, and so
you're-
you just and it's got air and like it has dual airbags, but like these dual airbags are
30 years old.
know, yeah, 30 years old.
No roll bars.
No rollover protection. I thought about adding a roll bar, but I decided to sell it before I did that.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, so it's like you kind of got the sense of like if something goes south, like it's gonna go real south. And like I just remember like being on the highway and the thing, and like trucks passed, like 18-wheelers passing me on the wrong side, and just being like, this suddenly feels like a really sketchy car. Like and like if I lived in the country, you know, like in
Right.
farmland, it would be genius. I'd still have it, or you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
if I lived, you know, even just in the suburbs, if I lived in Westchester, I'd probably still have it because
Yeah.
it's like it's an amazing car. It cost me nothing. Like I
Mhm.
put wheels and tires on it. I put
Oh, it's
and then any money
unbreakable.
any money I spent on it was like I put new sway bars
Yeah.
because I wanted to, you know. But like it cost me nothing. So
Yeah.
like the difference is the Boxster is much. It's like a much more confidence inspiring car in that it's like, oh, if someone hits me in this, I'm not gonna die.
Yeah.
Whereas the Miata was like, I don't trust that like this is gonna keep me safe
Yeah.
in an accident. And you know, obviously I never got in an accident with that. Haven't gotten a accident with the Boxster yet. And then like the Boxster, it's better for long trips and
Yeah. I mean,
it's great having like a proper sports car engine because like again the Miata engine was an economy car engine with a 4-valve head on it.
Yeah.
Like the Boxster engine, you rev it and it's like,
I-
oh, this is
Mhm.
special. This is more special,
yeah.
you know.
And both are different levels of slow car fast. Because the Miata, of course, like you know, you're gonna wring that out as much as you can because that's the only way you can drive that. And then with a base Boxster or even Cayman, like with the 5-speed, like it still encourages you to wring it out. It's just a little bit easier to get the speed.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's got torque. It's got low end torque.
Yeah.
Like I can pass people on the highway in fifth gear.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Miata, I couldn't.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But
What-
yeah, the safety thing, the sort of the daily drive, like the Boxster is a much better daily driver. But like I would say maybe the Miata was maybe a little bit more engaging just because it's so light and the shifter is still the best in any car. But the Boxster still is really good, and also, but it's a much better car
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
use day to day. you
Yeah.
know? It rides better.
It rides better. It
you know,
sounds better. Like
it sounds better. It's much quieter when you're driving on the highway.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, the
is
top
much
really
better
seals.
insulated.
yeah.
The top
Yeah.
is really. I'm surprised at how quiet. Like it was weird. I drove a 992 manual the other day, and I swear that or a few months ago, and I swear like when I got back in my car, that my car was quieter because the 992 it's got such big tires.
Oh
that you just
yeah.
get so much tire noise, you know. And I
Yeah.
got back in my
Yeah.
car, and I'm like, why is this
Yeah.
Side-
convertible quieter? But
Here's the thing. Yeah, like we need sidewall. Sidewall's good.
Yeah.
sidewall's good. Narrow tires are good.
Yeah.
But
Is it
not to say that the 992 wasn't great because it was.
is
but
it a fully automatic top? Is it able to lock into place by itself too?
You have to lock it into place.
Okay.
You push the button to unlock it, or you pull the handle to relock it, but then otherwise it's fully automatic, and it does it while you're moving too.
Oh,
and it's
cool.
got the
That's
glass
nice.
rear window,
Okay.
so
Yeah,
you
that's
can actually do
nice.
it without having to deal with it. And having broken a plastic rear window, and I know
Yeah.
Kevin, you've had trouble with
The
it.
only
Yeah.
987 Boxster I've driven is Kevin's sister-in-law because I'd driven your old 986, and then I've rented several 981s and 718s, which 718s have the fully automatic like finger that like locks it all
Yeah.
down. But so I was kind of curious if that had changed.
No, so you have to latch it, but that's the only thing.
The thing I remember is the biggest like sense of occasion, not the biggest sense of occasion. One thing I really liked on the 986 and 987 was like when you open the door, just like the the sculptedness of the door jamb. It's so weird to say this, but like this door jamb was so sculpted, and the metal and the finish and the paint was so like highly finished. I was like, oh, this is a nice car. Like this is a really nice car.
Yeah, this is like you can see where the money was spent.
Yeah.
I love the seating position. Like you get it and I sit on the floor in that car.
Oh, yeah.
Which is so great.
Yeah.
And like I'm short, I'm 5'7", but like I put the seat like right on the floor and it feels so perfect. And every other car I get in, the seating position feels too high.
That is the way that I do it too. Like in my Cayman, I sat like bottom seating position, and as far back as I could seat it.
Yeah.
And in other cars, like otherwise, I'm adjusted to my relative height. So.
Yeah.
But in that car, you want to be low, like, and it feels. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I drove my friend Mac, who I don't know if he's a friend of this podcast or not. I don't know if he listens.
Might be a listener. It's hard to say.
Might
Mac,
be.
hello.
I drove his.
We have things to say about you if you aren't.
I drove his S2000, and it's great. Like the engine is like it does the VTEC thing, and it's worth it. You know, but like you sit super high in that car, where you feel like you're like in a Miata, like you're sitting on top of it. And I got back in my car, and it's like, oh yeah, sports car.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's sort of like it sets the tone so right. And every time I drive something else and then get back in my car, I'm like, oh yeah, this is really cool.
That's awesome.
It's so
that's
good.
great.
Yeah,
that's great.
And like it sounds like a Porsche. The keys on the left.
Yeah.
It does Porsche things. The pedals are well weighted. The steering is nice. The brakes are good. Like it does. It feels like 100% like a Porsche.
Yeah.
Last
of
still like
hydraulic steering generation. So.
Yeah. So it's like. It still is it feels 100% like a Porsche, even though it's like the cheap one.
Yeah.
But it's also a daily. It's like it's still just a normal.
Seriously,
daily driver.
deal of the century. Like.
Yeah.
I mean, when you.
I would.
Yeah.
I would recommend them to anyone. They just 987s are harder to find, just because I think they sold more 986s.
They did.
Yeah.
986s are still really good though.
Yeah.
But.
IMS is an issue on everything, but less so on 987s.
Yeah, it's like 986 early 986s and 987s are like your safest bet.
Yeah, if you can get a pre 2000 986
pre 2000 or post 2000.
Yeah, with the single row. Or is it double row? Double row is better.
Oh, I don't know. I used to know.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, I used to know.
Yeah,
you get either an early 986 or a 987.
You just want to cross. Yeah, you want to cross that.
And the 987s got better over time.
Yeah.
So like they upgraded the engine in like 2005 and then they upgraded again in 2007. And so like mine's I guess is late for a 987, so it's like pretty well sorted.
Yeah. You just want to cross off one of the like 22 modes of catastrophic failure that is possible on these cars. IMS being the top of the list.
One of them.
So
top of the list, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Kevin and I were talking about the guy who bought, and this is such a sad story. The guy who bought a 996 Targa on Bring a Trailer, like, flew cross country to drive it home, and like it broke halfway. The IMS bearing failed.
That is the story that.
And
you
it's like that's my nightmare.
That's the nightmare.
And, yeah,
like that is the nightmare situation.
And he paid a premium to it. It was like a $41,000 Targa.
Yeah, and in the listing it said it had a new bearing, it had the LN bearing, and apparently
what was the deal?
I don't know 100% the story, so I don't want to speak out of turn.
Okay.
Like, I guess it may not have had the bearing that the ad said it did, or I don't know, or maybe it had a newer bearing and it still failed. I mean, some people. I learned that when I was doing research into these cars, I learned that some people just replace them with the OEM bearing.
Yeah, so
which like doesn't solve the
thing.
problem.
Right.
Which like all it does is just like extend the expiration.
You just kind of reset it for a second.
Well, and even having the L&N bearing like is still doing that just on a bigger scale. Like it's not a lifetime bearing. Like it's maybe like 100,000 miles.
The man who owns LN is a very angry man on the forums who will defend like his bearing to the death.
I feel like there is never going to be clarity about how bad those cars are, and like
I think it's
like we are never going to find truth about those situations, like what those.
I think it really is a maintenance item. Like you should probably replace those on an interval.
Like Porsche said, it was a lifetime part, and that's Porsche's fault.
Of course,
you know, but.
Yeah. Like
apparently with mine though, you have to split the crankcase. So
so yours is sealed. So it is deep in the bowels of the engine, and you have to split the case.
Yeah, so it's not coming out.
Yeah, which
so I'm gonna hope that it's a lifetime.
So you're more likely. well, not that I am trying to rain on your parade at all. Bore scoring is more of an issue.
Yeah, but not for the 2.7s.
Okay, so the smaller engines are.
It was the 3.4s and especially the 3.8s in the 997
Yeah.
Carrera S
Oh,
because
yeah.
that was like a really big. They were really kind of pushing how big they could make that engine.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 2.7 is not an issue.
So
Bore scoring is just not
that
a
was
thing.
the tough thing about like getting these PPIs where like I actually just sent Kevin a listing today that I would actually consider, but I don't actually know if it
Yeah.
would be worthwhile. But there's a 997S local, but I'm fearful slightly of things like that where I'm gonna have to. The PPI costs much more because you have to do boroscope. But
Yeah, I didn't do that with my PPI just because it's just not really an issue
Yeah.
with the 2.7
Yeah.
cars.
But-
But that's only base boxer and base Cayman.
So-
if you want a 911, you kind of want to get the boroscope.
Yeah, the lesson here is don't buy a Porsche because this is the stress you have to go through. Buy a $32,000 240 SX instead because that car will probably run into infinity until you modify it by strapping a turbo or dropping in another engine into it. So
I guess, or get a new Miata.
get a Miata
There
is
you go. Yeah, that's
literally
a good use of
always the
$32,000.
answer. Yeah.
You can get
Well-
all the good options.
Well, the problem is, I genuinely thought about that, but I was like, I don't want to pay for the depreciation.
Yeah.
Like, and I should, because I should like support the auto industry when it makes good cars, and like the new Miata is the best. But
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my god, if I own this thing for 5 years, I'm going to spend $17,000 in depreciation, and like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend that much on maintenance.
Yeah.
Well,
It
that's
would
not
hurt
true,
putting a
but-
brand new car on the street and like, it's
Yeah,
like
and just
anything
knowing that
happens
it's
like
and just knowing that like as soon as you drive it, you're like, yay, new car. That's worth $6,000 less than like it was 5 minutes earlier.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That
But
will do it.
that said, like I also get the peace of mind and the fact that it's a Mazda and it's not going to blow up or,
yeah.
so
yeah.
long as it's not a rotary.
Miata's good. Miata's a good car.
So far, the Boxer hasn't blown up either. So we'll
Yeah.
see.
That is
Just
true.
here's
No,
a
you
worry
got a good
about-
one. You got a
but
good one.
But that's just. But like you have to be super diligent with any used car, though. You know,
Yes.
Yeah,
like
totally.
what I mean, except for like unless you're. Well, I mean, not to pick on you, Kevin, but like you bought a Toyota Prius that wasn't good, and like
It was very bad.
and I know the story. Like you didn't do your diligence, and like. Again, I'm not picking on you. Like you.
No.
Here's the
I
thing
pick
is
on
that
Miata.
that was the thing is that he didn't do his diligence.
Right, and but you think like Toyota, and even like though it's a hybrid, like it's still like whatever, it's a Toyota. Like you don't think that like you should be able to just buy any Toyota that has been built
Yeah.
in the company's entire history.
We
for
were
a low amount
sold,
of money,
like-
and it should be totally fine.
We're sold
you
on like
know?
Yeah.
the Hilux being a war-torn country like cruiser,
Right.
and the Corolla being an infinity mile thing.
But like they're still cars.
Yeah.
they're still used cars. They're still subject to the abuses
Yeah.
of previous owners.
But
So, like,
unfortunately, if someone like crashes it and burns it down to ashes and then sells it to you glued together, it
Yeah.
may not be ideal.
the wrong glue.
Yeah,
That was the problem.
yeah.
that was it.
As that goes,
I
but
don't know.
that actually, by the way, Kevin, I should never clarified this, but in part, that was also why my Saab was a terrible car. Was because it had been into an accident before I had bought it. So as my first car,
Your first was this a 9.3?
95 900 SEV6.
Oh, okay, so
You
like
should
the
get
last
another
9.9.
one
Yeah.
to rectify it.
I just might. I'll just
Okay.
rock on down to the local Saab dealership.
Would you get a 900 or something else?
Okay, today I would.
We
probably,
should not turn this into Saab.
No,
talk,
no, no,
man.
no, no.
No.
If I did buy if I bought a Saab today, it'd be a 900. But I would probably, for nostalgia, just buy an NG. So like my generation, like the mid 90s GM
turbo.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So not the older
Well,
ones.
I think we're on hour 4, so we should probably wrap
We're on
up.
hour 4. This might turn into 2 podcasts, or it might be 1. We'll find out.
That's a good idea. That's
We'll
a good
find
idea.
out soon enough because we're on the 2
Well,
hour
if it's
mark.
gonna do 2 podcasts, let's just keep going. Let's just all night, guys.
Yeah.
We're not working tomorrow.
No.
That's right.
Well, I don't know. You guys are freelancers. Maybe you are.
It's hard
but
to
I'm not.
say.
Yeah.
I'm just
We
gonna
don't want
watch
to tell
that-
them what day of the week this is. We got to keep this evergreen.
Yeah.
This could be a
Okay, well-
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Could be Tuesday. They don't know.
We'll,
Okay,
we'll
fair
just
enough.
like
Well,
dub
it's
it
actually
in.
Wednesday.
Dub it in.
Yeah.
Anyways, Chris Perkins, always a pleasure. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you
of
so
course.
much.
Yeah.
No, this is a blast. Thank you so much. This was I love pedantry just as much as you guys. Maybe not quite as much as you guys, but
Well,
I like it. So
It is quite
it's fun to
annoying.
indulge in it once
We
in a while.
are.
It's always
our
nice to have someone who
pedantry.
actually knows what they're talking
Yeah.
about on the show.
I think I think the nadir of this podcast was the Aston Martin DB7 mirrors. And again, not to pick on
Yeah.
you, Kevin, it's just such a specific thing that I never noticed.
I
before.
I
blanked
wear
out
this
for
as a
that,
badge of honor. This is
that
not
part
picking on me.
of
This
it.
is earned.
Yeah, that was both the high and the low point
Yeah.
of this podcast. I think
Oh
it was
my
like we
God.
dedicated a good 10 minutes to Aston Martin DB7 mirrors.
If I was listening to a podcast and they talked about Aston Martin DB7 mirrors going from door mounted to window mounted in the span of a generation, I would be losing my mind.
Yeah.
I would be losing my mind with excitement.
Real quick, book recommendation. Have you read Sniff Petrol's book, like a medium-sized book of
Yes.
semi?
That's-
It's so good.
That's what got me Googling the mirrors.
What?
It's so good.
What is
Have you-
this?
So Sniff
I'll give you the
who
book.
was-
I'll give you the book.
Okay,
So
fine.
Sniff Petrol, who was
I
like a
follow
long time
him-
Richard Porter.
Yeah, on Twitter, I
Yeah,
think.
the book is just like it's like there's a section of the book dedicated to like every supercar that had Citroen CX door mirrors.
I love
or
that.
like
Okay, that is
or like
amazing.
Morris Marina door handle.
Yeah.
Like it's like the nerd. It is like the most pedantic thing I've ever read.
That is
but I
amazing.
read it in one sitting. It
Okay.
was so
Yeah.
good.
It's great.
It's like it appeals to like the three of us and like no one else.
I love
Right.
that. That is
wonderful.
our banner. That's our flag right there. The
We'll
pedantic.
put a link. We'll put
Yeah.
a link in.
Indeed.
Unless it gets cut. I don't know.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. Do follow us on social media at New496 on Instagram. And then we have a Twitter as well by the same handle.
All right.
And a Gmail. Kevin, what is the Gmail?
It's new for 96. 96 is spelled out. We'll go through it one letter at a time. And you know the rest.
Yep.
Chris Perkins, do you have anything to plug?
Road and Track. We're
Okay.
doing R&T, which is this new big fancy magazine. It's we're gonna do 6 of them a year. It's a really neat thing. So
Ooh,
subscribe.
Very cool.
Cool. Awesome.
All right. Thanks for
Yeah.
being on and thanks for listening.
No problem. Thank you guys. This is anytime. I'm happy to come back.
Fantastic.
Excellent. All right.
hear.
Let's do a whole door mirror podcast.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, I'm already taking notes.
we're going to do a whole series. All right.
All right.
Thanks
Bye,
and
guys.
goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.